Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show. My name is Julie Siddiqi and I'm talking to you here from London in the UK. And for the next few episodes, we are going to be talking about all sorts of different issues and ideas related to women. So one of my favourite topics, of course, talking about women's rights, women's role, but also responsibilities. We're going to be talking about issues around equality, the natural relationships between men and women, and really starting to explore some of these issues. And I think the reason we're doing this is because we need to really think about maybe some of the misconceptions that we all have perhaps amongst ourselves and the different understandings of these topics, but also really thinking about how we can explore perhaps some of the issues that arise and some of the misunderstandings that we have amongst ourselves about these issues. So I think it's really important for all of us, for men and for women, to understand our position and our understanding of the faith and what the faith says, what the Prophet himself said, peace be upon him, about women, how he interacted with women. And I think all of these things will help us to develop a broader understanding and to help us live our life in a way that is closer really to the way that Islam itself wanted it to be. So I think we'll start off talking about equality. And it's a big word, and we talk about it a lot in Britain. There's lots of laws in Britain to protect people, to help people to be equal with each other. And we have an Equalities Act here, which is really there to protect people from different aspects. And I suppose what we're talking about here is the fact that men and women, we believe, naturally are equal, but are different. And I think it's always important. We've had a kind of women's movement across the world over the last number of years. And I believe much of that has been very, very positive and has made it much more possible for women to participate and do things that maybe they couldn't have otherwise done before. But I think that movement was not here to say that men and women are exactly the same or that they are equal in everything, because I don't think that is what the movement was even trying to do, and I don't think that's what our faith teaches us. I think our faith teaches us very much that men and women are equal in many aspects, but are also very different in nature and in the way they understand and do things. And of course, people are different in personalities anyway, so people have their own natural personality, whether they're men or women, but within the understanding between men and women, I think it's important for us to always know that there are differences. So equality in the sight of God is important for us to remember and important for us to remind ourselves of, but also important for us to know that there are differences too. And I think if we can get to a point where we understand that, then the mutual respect and understanding between men and women will be much better. So I think even starting from the kind of basics of, if you think about an atom, within an atom there are different parts of the atom that mix and blend well together, but have their own different unique characteristics. And I suppose you could say the same about men and women, the relationship between men and women. And of course in the Quran we know many, many times it mentions how God, Allah, has created pairs of people that can come together. O mankind, we created you from a male and a female and made you into nations and tribes that you may know one another. And I think we always use that when we're talking about, certainly in the UK, Muslims talk about this verse a lot, and they use it in the context of helping us to understand our relationship with people of other faiths and other backgrounds. But actually, I think this is equally important, and for us, obviously, it's very important for us to remember that amongst ourselves, we're made up of nations and tribes. So Muslims are, there's a lot of variety and diversity, and Islam allows and encourages, and in fact is said that that's the basis of life and of our existence, that we're from different nations and tribes so that we may know one another. So it's very important for us to get together, to come together with people from different backgrounds or people who are different to us, but also amongst Muslims it's important for us to remember that diversity is a good thing, is positive and is celebrated. And amongst men and women, so it says as well, goes on to say that verily the most honourable in the sight of Allah is the one who has the most taqwa, is the most righteous. And it's important for us to remember that. Now, for me, this is talking about how men and women are different. They have their own uniqueness, but actually in the sight of God, the thing that is important is not what you look like or whether you're male or female, but it's your righteousness, your taqwa, your relationship with God, your remembrance of Him, and your understanding of your faith. And that's something that we constantly need to remind ourselves of. And so I think from an equality point of view, when it comes to men and women can gain the same rewards as each other. So if they are close to God, and if they are understanding their faith, and if they are living a life which is righteous and close to Him and following the ways of the Prophet and the examples from him, then the rewards are there for them equally. And we created pairs that you may remember the grace of God. So again, always reminding us that we're made as different, but that we can come together. And we obviously, as part of our faith, we believe that men and women need each other. So again, this idea that we are we're separate, but we can come together as a whole. And it's natural for us to want to find fulfillment, for women to want to find fulfillment with men, and for men to find fulfillment with women. And it's important that we look for the right person for us, and that relationship can come together in as a harmonious way as possible. But certainly we need to just always be clear that men and women in all of these things are equal. And in terms of basic humanity, so men and women are the same. We came from the same source, the same root, the same two people. And I think the understanding that certainly some other faiths have about how women were the source of evil in the world, and how everything that went wrong in the world stemmed from women. Of course, in Islam we don't have this concept. We very much have the understanding that we started from the same place, and that we can end up also in the same place, which is obviously for us ultimately would be paradise. O mankind, be dutiful to your Lord, who created you from a single person, which was of course Adam, and created his wife, and from them he created men and women. So this is always also a really good reminder for us that men and women started from the same place, and are equal in the sight of God. And also reminding us in the Quran that the way human beings are created, and of course they are created from a single clot, and then the baby is formed in the mother's womb, and all of this is beautifully, amazingly described in the Quran in a way that's just so poetic. And when you imagine that the Quran was revealed so many years ago, and some of these scientific miracles are only really being talked about now, I mean, it's just another reminder for us of how special and how amazing the Quran and the teachings of the Quran really are. And obviously we are, so there's no difference in terms of qualifications, and each one of us complements the other. And that's important. So we can't live on our own. We can't manage in isolation. We have to be complementing and working with each other in harmony. And I think sometimes we quite often see inequality. We do see inequality between men and women. We are made to feel that somehow men have more of an importance than women. And I think these issues are things that we need to explore further. So I will come back after the break, and we will explore some of these issues in more detail. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. So before the break we were talking about men and women and equality and all of the different reminders that we have in the Quran and from the teachings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, about how men and women are naturally born to be together, how they can complement each other, how they are both coming from the same source. And in this second part of the show, I'm just going to talk about some of the other responsibilities that men and women have. I think we can always talk about Islam in a way of listing do's and don'ts and right and wrong and rights and responsibilities. And of course, these things are important. But I always feel that Islam and the teachings from the Quran and the Prophet's life himself, peace be upon him, his amazing examples, and all of the people around him and the work that they did and how they helped all of us really to shape our own lives, is really there to give us a framework, to obviously give us the teachings and the formalities, but actually for us to then use that to really think about what it means to us in our life. I think if we live our life as a list of do's and don'ts and rights and wrongs, we're not going to be fulfilled. I don't think we're going to live in a way that was really meant for us. And this applies to both men and women. And I think sometimes when it comes to women, the topic of women, and we always talk about women's rights or women's role, and a lot of the time it's men that actually talk about these things. And I think it's really good when women can also be part of this discussion, and actually to help men to understand that our life is more than just a list of do's and don'ts and rights and wrongs. I went to a wedding ceremony recently, a Iqraa, and I felt uncomfortable with the way the Imam had given the reminders to the couple, because I felt that he very much listed the do's and don'ts, especially directed towards the woman. He did mention some of the role of the man, but it was very much done in a kind of as if he was reading from a shopping list. And I just felt that if he has sent this couple away with a shopping list and a list of do's and don'ts, I'm not sure how well he reminded them of their equality, the respect, the love, the development of their lives together. And I'm just not sure that he did that in the way that I would have done if I had been given that opportunity. So I think in the Quran, again, in verse Surah 9, it's so beautifully explained when it says that the believers, the men and the women, are helpers, supporters, friends and protectors of one another, and enjoying what's good, forbid that's evil, and then prayers and zakat and believing in God, and all of these things are mentioned. But I think the first bit, helpers, supporters, friends, protectors of one another, is so beautifully written. I'm just not sure that we always remember it in such a nice kind of poetic way, and I think we should. In all aspects, as I've mentioned in the first half, that men and women are equal in all aspects. So that would be equal in their rights to education, or the way we should encourage girls as well as boys to be educated, the way that we have to acknowledge that Islam came, these teachings came at a time when women were not respected, and when a woman's role was sometimes very much to do with her being the property of the man, and how girls were buried alive, and all of these horrific things that we hear about before these teachings came. And I think we always need to remind ourselves of what it was trying to do. What was it trying to teach us? Obviously in very, very harsh ways, some of the ways women were treated. But I would say that in some parts of the world, some of these understandings of women and their role actually still exist. And so in that sense, we still constantly need to be reminding people, wherever they are, of the basic teaching of Islam about how girls have just as much right to education as boys. You know, the Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned how if you bring up daughters, how you'll be close to him in paradise. I mean, this is just amazing and so beautiful. And when you have daughters like I do, I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and I can see the differences in them. But clearly, for me, they're all equal. They're all different. They all have their different personalities, but we treat them equally. And I want them to be brought up to know that whatever God says, it's equal to both of them, the good and the bad, and how they need to develop their relationship with Him in an equal way. And equality in financial dealings and in property ownership. The Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned the most complete believer is the best in character, and the best of you is the best to the women that are around him. And again, it's a reminder to men, but it's also a reminder to women as well. You know, we need to develop these relationships in such a way that men want to be around women, that men want to treat women well that he has around him. And seeking knowledge, of course, is compulsory for men and for women, and it's mentioned many, many times in many of the hadith here that we know about. And talking really about how equality in social responsibility. You know, we are all part of our society wherever we are, and we all have to play an equal role in developing that society and making sure that you know, things are running in the way that they should be, that we participate in whatever we're good at. And these things apply to both men and to women. And you know, there's a beautiful way of also explaining this, that verily women and men are women are the twin halves of men. So it's very much talking about how we come together and how we complement one another. And I certainly know as my role as a wife, you know, if it wasn't for my husband and the support and the love and the respect that we have for each other, I wouldn't be able to do any of the work that I do. And so for me it's a crucial part of my life. And if I saw myself as somehow separate from him, I wouldn't be able to function in the way that I do. And of course, equality in rewards and in punishments. So men and women have similar obligations and responsibilities to reform and correct things in society and work together. You know, for me, there's too much thought around the world, and even here in the UK amongst Muslims, that women and men should be working separately in whatever work that they're doing. And I simply just don't see that is the case. And as mentioned earlier, you know, we're supporters and friends and can complement each other in a way that I think we need to just always be constantly reminding ourselves of. And, you know, so the rewards are up for grabs for all of us. You know, we all have a responsibility. And one of the things that really attracted me to Islam when I became Muslim was the fact that I was treated as an individual in terms of my relationship with God. So I have my own relationship with my Creator, as does my husband and everyone else around me. So it's important for me to remember that I am me, and I am the one who is going to be answerable to Allah on the Day of Judgment. No one is going to be speaking on my behalf, and it is therefore important for me to understand who I am, what my role is, what my relationship is with people, and how I can be the best person I can be within my family, within my workplace, in society, and you know, how I can really make the most of what is on offer for me as a woman, as an individual, but also as part of a couple. I'm married, I have children, I'm a mother, and so all of my understanding of all of those different roles and how they play a part in my life is something that I have to constantly be reminding and looking for. There's a story here of, and this is also talking about how women should be able to look after others, to take them in, and to be very much people who nurture and look after other people, even people who are from different backgrounds or from different statuses to us. Women have a really important role in sort of nurturing and bringing up the next generation, but also in looking after the people that are around them. And there's a beautiful story here from Hani, the mother of Hani, when she gave protection to somebody who wasn't Muslim. And these kinds of stories are really important for us, and we can talk about those in another episode, about how I think the role of women is so crucial in society, and certainly in a country like the UK where Muslims are minority here. I think the role of women and her responsibilities are crucial. And often we see in our communities, men and women not being given that respect and not being made to feel that she is equal to men, and how then she can play that role. And I think we can discuss that in more detail. But I think this idea that men and women are helpers and supporters and friends is something we need to be reminded of. And I don't think I always see that playing out in our communities, whether it is in the UK or in other countries. And women and men are equal in every sense from a faith perspective. So the Quran reminds us over and over again that we have similar obligations, responsibilities, and that we are the helpers, supporters, friends, protectors of one another. So just really to sum up and just to remind ourselves, talking about men and women being equal and complementary. So our very nature and the way we are born and developed is different. Our personalities, of course, are different, whether we're men or women, but certainly the roles and the natural way that men and women are is different, but has to come together and complement each other. You know, we started from the same source, as we said, from Adam and Eve, and we came, we've developed over the generations, and men and women are different, but can complement and come together as the twin halves of each other. Very much the garments, very much the people protecting and being friends and supportive of one another. And I mentioned how in my own case, how the relationship with my husband is such that if it wasn't for that, his support and us working together with mutual respect and feeling that we are equals and contributing in whatever way we can to our family and to the wider society and to our lives, that I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing. So we very much see ourselves as equal. We can sometimes make mistakes the same. We have to sometimes come together and work out what we can do to correct things and to make our lives better. But in the end, I have a relationship with my Creator as a woman and as an individual, and he does as well, and other people around us. And we need to then remember that on the Day of Judgment we'll be answerable for our own actions and for what we have done. And to just sum up and say that if we see our faith as a list of do's and don'ts, that men have to do this and women have to do that, and a shopping list and a kind of black and white understanding, then I just don't think that is what was meant by the amazing life that the Prophet led, and how he taught us in everything that he did, peace be upon him, and how he was with women, and how he encouraged men and women to come together and work together for the sake of common good, even within their own lives, but in the wider society as well. So I think we constantly remind ourselves and remember that we are people who can benefit from everything that is here in all of our teachings, but always be learning, always be reminding ourselves, and never be complacent that we fully understand all of this. So until next time, Assalamu alaikum.